Hi, Dr. Asada. We are interviewing Dr. Su-Wan Yang.
Hi.
And this is Lauren, and this is Rayleigh, and Corey is here too. So we're just going to ask her some questions. What first got you interested in scientific research, and when?
Okay. So in my undergraduate school years, I majored biotechnology and genetic engineering, which sounds much like engineering, but it was like biochemistry in Korea. So kind of telling my age, but when I was a freshman, it's by the time when genome sequencing and like the genome project has been rising, so that made me like gain interest in the field. But yet I wasn't still sure whether I want to be like a researcher or if I want to go to industry. I was sure that I'm not a medical student because I don't like blood. And then I like learning biochemistry, microbiology. It was fun, yet it was still limiting. Like I would just learn by textbook. Like back then we didn't have like in Korea I don't have FRI stuff like that. So it was like I could watch my TAs run a gel or that's it. But I will learn about how these discoveries were made, which sound to be really interesting. So really it was by my senior year when I determined to go to graduate school to do research because I just wanted to learn more in detail about how those findings were made. But the first part of like going into that, applying for a major in bio, field was the genome project, and there are a lot of magazines, there are a lot of news showing up about that. I said, oh, that sounds really cool. I want to try that. Let me see what that is. And then when I start studying, it was like, oh, it sounds fun, but still I can't really understand how they figure that out. I think I'll only be able to figure it out if I go to grad school.
Yes.
So that's how.
So did you start research when you got to grad school, or was your first experience in a lab in grad school, or did you have some undergraduate lab experience?
I had very limiting undergraduate research experience. So as I mentioned to you in class, unlike whatever you are learning right now, I learned that when I was in graduate school. So I did a little bit of like shadowing during my undergraduate years for like grad students or postdocs, but that was very limiting. And the real actual hands-on research experience in a lab was in graduate school.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And where did you go to school in Korea?
Korea University in South Korea. Yeah, so when I came here, professors would ask me, oh, what university did you? I was like, oh, I'm from Korea University. So where in Korea? There is a Korea University in Korea.
Is that in Seoul?
It's in Seoul.
Okay.
So yeah.
Very cool. What schools were you looking at for graduate school? And how did you stumble upon UT?
So initially, right before I graduated, I was accepted to a graduate school in Korea. I don't know how to pronounce the full name, but it's in short, it's KAIST. And it's a kind of a specialized for STEM research. And I was accepted to that school with full, like scholarship and everything. But after I got into the school and joined a lab, I didn't really like the research. I don't think it was right fit for me. Not that the lab was bad, it wasn't just a fit for me. So I actually made a decision pretty fast that I'm gonna quit. And then of course there has to be an alternative, right? There has to be something else. And then I was planning, I actually want to study abroad. So I used to live in the States when I was a little girl, and I was like, well, I want to go back. And US has like very high ranking schools. They do active research, and I wanted to kind of go back to US after like 14 years or something. And I applied to UT, of course. I applied to schools like Duke was another school that I applied to because they do really good in basketball, but also they have a very good program in molecular biology. I applied to Wisconsin-Madison, which is another very great school in the field. And then I did apply to University of Arizona because that's where I used to live. Like I used to live in Tucson, so I was like, I'll just apply for that. And then actually among the schools that I applied to, UT was one of my top priorities because they had UT, in the UT graduate schools, there were several professors, which like the research field really like was something that I really wanted to do. And there were several professors at UT, so I was like crossing my fingers, and fortunately I got like admitted to UT, and eventually got it to eventually ended up joining a research lab of a professor that I wanted to from the very beginning.
Did you join Dr. Paul's lab?
Yes, so I joined Dr. Tanya Paul's lab in 2008 and started my research. And it was a little challenging again because I had very limited research activities, but again, it really helped me because I had to go a lot of trials and errors, but at the end, things worked out pretty well, and I got to publish a pretty good paper and graduate in like about 5.5 years and do another postdoc with her for a year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So she was one of the professors that originally attracted you to UT.
Mm-hmm.
So had you read her research?
Yes, so I went to, by the time when I was applying for grad school, I was like looking at the program, and you could search for faculties, and there's like a keyword like interest fields. And in general, I was interested in like cancer research, but it's like very broad like cancer research. But in particularly, I like DNA repair damage, or cancer research, kind of like that. And Dr. Tanya Paul was actually, she does DNA double-strand break repair and signaling in human cells, or yeast, or archaea cells, so that really caught my interest, and I found that a lot of her papers, has been publishing very strong papers very actively, which thought, oh wow, the research must be going very actively. And I just emailed her actually when I was in Korea before I came to UT. Just as soon as I got the admission, I was like, hey. And then when I came to UT, I would talk with graduate students, the senior students, ask about the labs, and they would also give very positive feedbacks about her lab, which made me want to join her lab even more.
Mm-hmm. Wow, awesome. So was your specific study during grad school double-stranded breaks, like what Dr. Tanya Paul was
so my project, my dissertation, title was about understanding the mechanism of DNA double-strand break repair in human cells. So I wanted to, my project was about the repair mechanism, especially in the human. I was working on this single-stranded DNA binding protein that was relatively new, that was discovered relatively new by the time that I was studying. And I really wanted to study how that affects in DNA repair, and I found that it could actually stimulate DNA resection activity of a nuclease, and it involved a lot of biochemical assay, and eventually I found some interesting findings, which ended up allowing me to publish a paper.
Awesome. So, can you explain how working in BioBricks now, is it part of Dr. Tanya Paul's lab, or is it separate, or how do they collaborate?
It's actually separate. So the principal investigator for the BioBricks stream is Dr. Karen Browning. And she does a lot of RNA translation, translation initiation, those type of mechanism, which is in plants. So the research field itself is very different from what I have been doing.
Mm-hmm.
However, the techniques that I've learned can also be used for that study. So I could say that whatever I learned from Dr. Paul's lab, that I kind of delivered here, is a lot of the techniques and the background of the techniques, plus while this lab is doing projects from Dr. Browning, there's a little bit of collaboration where we're doing a small project from that Dr. Paul is doing in her lab as well. Does that answer?
Oh yes. So also, how after graduating or getting your PhD from UT, how did you decide that you wanted to continue research here and become the director of FRI?
Oh, I'm the research educator.
Research educator of FRI. Director too, though. You manage everything.
Well, director, we have Dr. Stacia Rodenbush.
Oh,
She's
okay.
the director. Hi, Stacia. But, so my PhD advisor, she was a female, right? And I'm also a female scientist. So after I got my PhD, shortly after I got my PhD, I was already married by the time I was graduating, and my husband was also pursuing his degree in engineering here at UT. But I graduated a semester faster than him, although I came a year earlier than him. And I was also pregnant shortly after I graduated. So I was doing my postdoc. I was pregnant when I was, and the main reason that I decided to stay here in Austin is my husband. So we had an agreement. So wherever we move in the States, we'll decide based on him. However, whether we stay here or go back to Korea, it's up to me. So I did want to stay and continue my stay in research in the States. But then he found a job here at Austin, and which made me feel okay, I will pursue a career here in Austin, whatever that could be. So that could have been a postdoc or, in an industry. But then after I had my daughter, I actually was home for 10 months. So I have not been working in science for 10 months. But then while I was taking a break, my advisor advised me to find another research position before I leave, because while you're mothering, parenting, it's very it's not that happens all the time, but sometimes it's difficult to come back. So I was aware of that, and again, I did want to continue research, whatever that field is. Is it industry, academia? As long as I could do research, I wanted to do that. And shortly after I had my daughter, I met with Dr. Ilya Finkelstein, who is another professor here at UT, and he knew about my PhD work, as he was also working on a project that was kind of following up my initial project. So he knew very well about my work, and I got to expose myself to him. I was considering doing a postdoc with him initially, but then again, it's just me and my husband here and kind of talking a lot of personal stuff. But I did, again, for 10 months, I didn't, I decided not to work for daycare and stuff like that. But then during that time, a position a research educator position opened for the FRI BioBrick stream, which I wasn't aware of. But Dr. Finkelstein, who had a connection with me, he actually contacted me and told me about the position and recommended me to apply. And it seemed to be a really interesting position, so there goes the application. And unfortunately, things worked well where I could, take over the BioBrick stream and run the stream and come back to science.
Right. So,
okay, so what are you doing now with BioBricks?
So with the BioBrick stream right now in the spring semester, again, it's freshmen who are coming. It's second semester year. They're coming in my lab. My goal is to help them feel comfortable with scientific research and at least have them a chance to learn and get a real hands-on touch of each experiment that could be applied in any other field. So again, the first more than maybe 3/4 of the semester is heavily based on training. So they get trained with getting familiar with the lab and learn some basic lab techniques, and then it gets advanced, it gets harder. And then after the training is done, they actually now work on their own research project. It could be related with But it's basically understanding biochemical activity of proteins that could be involved in RNA translation, transcription, DNA repair. So they're working on that. So yeah, my spring semester is basically training my freshmen, training my mentors to become good mentors, and managing the whole lab, with hopefully not leaving a student out.
No, you do not at all.
What advice do you have for a student, an undergrad student who wants to pursue research, either in their undergrad or later?
So for those who are interested in research, the first thing that I was always scared of when I was an undergraduate student was just going to the lab seemed to be so intimidating. And that's natural. It's new for anything that's new could be scary. But just because it looks so it doesn't mean that you cannot do it. So there's nobody of course some people may have had prior experience but just because you don't have that doesn't mean that you can't. One thing is I again started research, real research, the research that my freshman students are doing in graduate school. So I had a later start, but because of that later start, I had to do a lot of trials and error, which ended up helping me teach my students again. For those who do want to do research as a career, which I feel want to go to you would have to go to graduate school if you want to be a professor in the science field. Likely you have to do a postdoc in these days. To go to graduate school in the science field, you must have prior research experience in your undergraduate school years. So if you are interested in research, this is the good time to start research. Since are you all freshmen or sophomores?
Freshmen and sophomores.
So freshman, sophomore, or early junior years is the best time to join a research lab. I'm not saying all, but trying to join a faculty lab in a senior year, that might not be easy to join a lab, because even for faculties, senior, even though if you come, they have to train you. By the time they are finished with training, it's the time for you to do some work independently, but you're just leaving, right? So they want to train, but they want students who could actually work on their project and make some type of progress, right? So if you're interested in research, just feel free to email or find a professor and ask them if you could join to be part of a member to learn the research. So yeah, do research now.
Go research. And what is an average day at work for you?
Average day hours, or what I do usually?
Just what you do.
What you do right now. I'll kind of make a difference. So when I was a graduate student or a postdoc, all I do is, mostly when I'm in lab, I did experiments, lunch, that was it. But now I'm managing an undergraduate lab. Right now I don't have a lot, especially in the spring, I don't have a lot of time to do my own research. However, I do a lot of designing the projects. I do a lot of computer where I design protocols or think about experiments, writing rec letters. But it's most about designing the experiments and structuring the whole course is most of my spring semester. The fall and the summer is when I actually get to stay more in the lab to do my own research along with the students, and do course development at the same time. But that's what I do mostly.
So your research is very similar to, at a higher level, but very similar to what BioBricks, the goal of BioBricks is?
Yes, it's actually along. So again, the research that the BioBricks students are doing is not any easier than a graduate student would do. I think the level of the experiments, the projects that you're doing is something for a first or second year graduate student, which you guys are already doing, but you're doing it great. So I'm really actually proud of my students. What I usually do is there are some techniques that you need more my attention, and sometimes we need results a little faster. And sometimes I actually just do it myself. Because I have more experience, sometimes I tend to do an experiment that for students who are just doing their first or second time, it may take them a week or two. For me, it may take a little shorter. Or to confirm that data the students got is for sure, sometimes I repeat it myself just to make sure that that data is true. So it's basically, it's not like I have a completely different project, it's all a whole where I try to help this project move forward.
Awesome. Okay, we'll ask you one more question. What is your favorite part of your job?
My favorite part of my job is working with undergraduate students. I never really worked with an undergraduate student when I was a grad student or a postdoc, and it just makes me feel really good when the first couple of weeks I see frustration on their faces, but then towards the end I could see that where they feel like, oh, I could tell how much they feel comfortable more in lab, and I also see improvement on their work. And just seeing that improvement just makes me so happy. That makes my day. And of course, and then I have students who were part of me from their freshman years, they're about to graduate, and like just seeing all their accomplishments against just observing, like looking at student accomplishment just makes my job feel so happy.
Awesome. Thank you so much for letting us interview you.
Thank you for having me.